President Trump clearly does not think the world is in a good place. And I think many observers around the world would agree with him on that, even if they agree with him on nothing else. That is, the international system that emerged after the Second World War and which further developed after the fall of the Soviet Union. Some people call it the rules-based world order, Rubio, rules-based international order, some the liberal international order, some the American international order, or even some the American empire. Whatever you want to call it, and whether you like it or dislike it, it is clearly on the rocks. It faces geopolitical challenges from China, from Russia, from Iran, though not quite so much from Iran as it did a year ago, and North Korea and others. It also faces kind of an internal fracturing among as public opinion in different parts of the world, very much including many European countries, has shifted away from some of the ideas that it supports. It suffers from institutional breakdown, most notably, I think, the complete collapse of the World Trade Organization, which has been essentially irrelevant to everything that's happened in the last few years. And I could go on. And so Trump, I think, rather than doing what President Biden attempted, which was to find a way to shore up that system, Trump seems to be looking past it to some new and as yet kind of unshaped, perhaps, international system. One in which international institutions and international law are weaker than they at least aspired to be under the rules-based international order. National sovereignty is protected. I should also add, by the way, that when the Trump administration and many of its supporters look at this crisis of the rules-based order, they look at internal crises among the Western liberal democracies. One of them would be, what we experience is essentially open borders in the United States in the Biden years, with mass illegal migration across our southern frontier. In Europe, you've seen waves of migration where many Europeans now begin to wonder whether their countries will still be their countries as time goes on. So on and so forth. Then aligned with that is a kind of what I think the people like Vice President Vance would say would be a kind of a mental, moral, and spiritual failure on the part of the elites in the Western world, where they fail to perceive these threats and focused on sort of imaginary threats or visionary threats, or say on the issue of climate change, a real threat perhaps, but one where the various efforts and programs that they initiated had little to no chance of actually dealing with the problem that concerned them. So a sort of a displacement and an abdication of elites. The root problem that people like Vance would identify would be, I think, that the loss of national sovereignty as a moral value, as well as a political fact, led to a kind of a weakening of the bonds that make a political society coherent and develop a leadership that is focused on the concrete problems of the people in that society. And so they came to see this international order, this cosmopolitan system, this globalism, not merely as a good idea perhaps in its day, but whose time has passed, but is actually a source of many of the problems that people were experiencing in their own societies. And so they see themselves as engaged in a kind of an existential struggle to regain sovereignty in the United States, and they hope other countries to regain sovereignty as well, as a way of kind of re-anchoring politics. At least as far as I can tell, this is the vision that drives them. And they would say that the globalization of trade and the globalization, frankly, of finance that accompanies it were important elements in creating this post-national universe that again, in their view, is unsustainable. So they see the Trump's trade policy not simply as a way to try to rebalance the American trade accounts so that our trade deficits are smaller and our surpluses are larger, but as a way to strike at this globalized system that is, in their view, kind of strangling and corrupting the national life of the Western peoples.